Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I am doing a video on Commander hot takes, which, what does that exactly mean? Well, I asked my patrons, give me some hot takes on the Commander format or maybe Magic in general. So it is an opinion of theirs, but I'm giving my version of that hot take or what I think, whether or not I agree, disagree. At the end of the day, there's going to be some hot takes in this video, no doubt. Something that I am not exactly lacking for on my channel. I do have some pretty strong opinions on certain things, and I have been playing the game for quite some time. So let's get to it. First of all, Swanington said, mana burn should still exist in the game. And this is a funny one. And I thought I'd do this first because for me, this is an easy one. I agree. I don't like that they got rid of mana burn. I think maybe they got rid of it just because, you know, the game's already really complicated and they got rid of it just to make things a little less complicated. I will say there's a whole lot of cards, like Braid of Fire is a card I bring up all the time, which there's a card that got a whole lot better when they got rid of mana burn, right? There's actually quite a few. There's a few cards that got a lot worse, like Pygmy Hippo, for example, is a card, funny old card that got a lot worse when they got rid of mana burn because, of course, people can very easily tap down their own lands and there's no downside to it, right? It used to be if you tap down your lands, of course, you're going to add mana. If you don't use it, you get the mana burn. That's kind of why I liked it. Funny enough, this does sort of play into the next hot take. So Adelaide says Sol Ring should be banned just like the Moxen were. So obviously I had a lot of hot takes because I just asked my patrons, I said, you guys, you know, on the Discord, I just said, give me some hot takes that you guys have for the Commander format. And obviously the banning stuff, there was a lot. So I didn't cover all of them. And funny enough, Sol Ring is one of those cards that got better when they got rid of mana burn, right? I mean, how often have you tapped your Sol Ring for 2 mana and only used 1 of it, right? And you have 1 mana left over. Normally that would burn you if there was mana burn, but of course, because they got rid of it, there's no downside now, right? Having a permanent tap for more than 1 mana, there's 0 downside, right? Dark Ritual is another card that back in the day was, you know, if you didn't use the mana, you could get burned by it. So that's kind of why I like the mana burn. But anyway, I've already covered that. Sol Ring should be banned. I agree, okay? And not because I think it should be banned right now, although I certainly would be okay with it. I don't even use it. Sol Ring for me is a card that I'm shocked that it's not banned already. Talked about banning a lot on my channel, and that's why I'm not going to cover all the whole ban topic in general. I've covered in a bunch of different videos, particularly 2 that I did last, I think like December, where I talked about all the banned cards in the format. And then I also talked about, I did essentially a reaction video because there's so much to cover with banning and unbanning and all that I did a reaction video to that video, covering the comments on that video. So you can go check that out. And pretty much all my opinions on banning is going to be covered there. I err on the side of not banning cards. All right. However, with Sol Ring, and I will make a video because I've had people ask me, you know, what would you ban? You know, if I'm more okay with cards being unbanned, well, what would you ban? I am going to make a video coming up that is going to talk about cards that I would actually ban. And it's more going to be a video about, I'm shocked these cards aren't banned. Again, I don't really care that much if cards aren't banned. For me, it's more of a rule 0 thing a lot of times, you know, or is your deck actually casual, that kind of stuff. So for me, it's like, well, man, you'd think when they were putting the format together, these cards would have been banned. And spoiler alert, Sol Ring is going to be one of them. I'm just shocked they didn't ban this card right out of the gate. You know, this seems like one of those cards. And I've talked about before how, just like Adelaide said, the Moxen to me, like, what's the difference? For me, any positive mana rock is essentially in the same boat, and some are better than others. Sol Ring might be the best mana rock ever. I know it cost 1 mana. Oh, woo, so the Moxen are free, but it's adding 2. That's insane, okay? And to think about how insanely, absurdly busted Sol Ring is, Worn Power Stone is essentially the fair version of that card, right? And of course, a lot of people play that card in the format. Still, I don't play it anymore. I used to, but a lot of people still play that card. That's 3 mana. It's doing the same thing, but costs 3 mana and comes into play tapped. So you essentially can't really use it until turn 4. Sol Ring you use on turn 1. Big difference there, right? And I was kind of thinking about this. I'm like, I wonder if they could make a fairer version of Sol Ring, right? Just to give you an idea of how ridiculous Sol Ring is. If they came out with a card that was Sol Ring but only added 1 mana, so you have a 1 mana artifact that taps to only add 1, who's going to play that card? Everybody, right? That card goes in every commander deck. A 1 mana artifact that taps to add 1 colorless. Everyone plays it. Then they come out with a card that costs 2 mana and adds 2. So is a Soul Ring, but again, is it as good? Instead of costing 1, it costs 2 mana, right? If they came out with that card, who plays it in their commander deck? Everybody, right? That's a worse version of a Soul Ring, and it goes in every single commander deck. Then they come out with a card that costs 3 mana. Okay, a 3 mana Soul Ring, essentially War and Power Stone, but doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. If that card came out, probably everyone is going to play that card, right? So I just listed 3 cards that are all quite a bit worse, and in some cases way worse than Soul Ring, that are going to go in every single deck. Sort of gives you the idea of how ridiculous Soul Ring is. Again, if it doesn't get banned, I don't care. When I see a Soul Ring in a commander game, I'm like, whatever. I don't play it. If it gets banned, I certainly won't care. I'm just kind of surprised that it's not. Why is it in the format already? Sticking with the banned conversation slightly, Dan said, I don't like officially banning cards. I think it's a slippery slope. It's rule 0 for me. And I agree. I agree with this hot take. I don't think this is much of a hot take, to be honest. I agree. And again, I've talked about the ban thing a lot. A lot of the cards that are banned, I'm like, I don't get it. Why this card and not this? That's one thing I do a lot in my videos. Why is Tellurian Academy banned and Gaia's Kratos not? Those are essentially, in my opinion, equal power level. Why is this card banned and not this one? Because for me, they're essentially in the same boat, right? We're going to ban Sundering Titan because it destroys lands, but Armageddon, that's okay, even though it's quite a bit cheaper. You can make all the arguments in the world. I don't want to get into that discussion here. The slippery slope argument works there as well. Ban Hull Breacher because it makes the game unfun. You can't draw cards. And, when that got banned, I was like, I don't get it. Notion Thief has been in the format forever and does the exact same thing. Everyone says, yeah, but it's 1 cheaper and it's only blue. It's still the same thing. It's still doing the same thing. And in my opinion, Notion Thief is better because it's drawing you cards. It was very weird to me though how upset people got about Hull Breacher, but yet Notion Thief, nobody seemed to complain about. I say that stuff all the time. I say the same about Kiki Jiki. Everyone complains about, this card combos with whatever, and just Kiki Jiki combos with a ham sandwich, and no one has ever called for that card to get banned. I don't get it. Again, spoiler alert. But I agree that the slippery slope thing certainly does happen. Anyone can make that argument. If you're going to ban one card, why not ban another one? And the rule 0 is good. Now that I play with my patrons a lot on my Discord, I didn't have a playgroup for the longest time. So if you don't have a playgroup, kind of sucks just the rule 0 all the time because people aren't going to do that. I played for a long time online with random strangers that I didn't know, and relying on rule 0 doesn't work there. Trust me, I've tried. Okay, that's the one downside there. Rule 0 is nice when you have your own play group, and rule 0 also doesn't work with even in the LGS situation. I have people all the time complain about, I go to my LGS and everyone's playing these superpowered decks. Where do I play my casual deck? And as I always say, come join my Discord, where people are playing decks like that all the time. A lot of times, and especially because the format has moved into more competitive direction, I would imagine for a lot of people, it's tough to even find a game where they can fit the decks that they want to be playing. As I've said before, I think that, for a lot of people, it would be easier to just say, okay, let's all play our competitive decks. All right, now let's have one game where we all play our jank. Let's bring out our janky, underwhelming commanders and do that. I'm getting off on a bit of a tangent here, but essentially, I do agree that the banning cards is a slippery slope. However, I don't think Rule 0 solves all the problems. I've had a few people over the years say, Rule 0 solves all of this. No, it doesn't. It doesn't solve it when you're playing with strangers online, and it doesn't solve it when you are even at your LGS with people that you're maybe friendly or familiar with. It still doesn't work there either, right? A lot of people, what are you going to do? People just say no, right? Oh, okay, I don't want to have any stacks in this game. That's my rule 0. No, I'm going to do it anyway, right? So that isn't the solution either, unfortunately. Getting onto the Stax thing, the next hot take, The Village Green says annoying tax cards should be banned. So I guess this is covering the ban thing as well. And, getting into another topic where I had a lot of comments about this. And I grabbed a few that are covering this sort of tax stacks thing. And again, tax and stacks are not the same. They're similar. And a lot of Stax decks will play the tax cards because it works with the stack strategy. Again, stacks originally comes from smokestack. The idea of it is making your opponents sacrifice their permanents, but also it is essentially resource denial. So a Winter Orb, is considered a stacks card because it's not allowing you to do stuff. That's sort of the overall, right? Tax is, to me, a different thing. It's not necessarily stacks. It does kind of fit together though, right? Now, that being said, this hot take is obviously very vague. Annoying tax cards. What does that mean? The Thalia is going to be banned? You know, Thalia is obviously a card that gets played in a lot of different formats. How many people would have an issue with that if it was played in a Commander game? I certainly would. Yeah, it's a little annoying, but so is a counterspell, right? Again, this is where the slippery slope argument comes in, where everyone's annoyed by something. And I did a video a long time ago about the strategies people hate most. And man, that list is almost endless. I made the video about it and then actually ended up remaking the video because the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, man, pretty much every strategy in Magic can be included in here. And you can go watch that video. It's actually a very old video for me now, but I talk about how pretty much every strategy is hated by someone or another, whether it be discard or, you know, land destruction, obviously, tax, stacks, counter spells, all that kind of stuff. There's so much that you just can't, just being annoyed by things, we're definitely not going to use that as a metric for banning cards. Conversely, Rev G says Stax is fun to play with and against and is healthy for the game. And I would say that I agree with that. I mean, you do have to be a certain kind of person, right? When I play against a Stax deck, I think of it as a problem to be solved. And yes, I would, when I first started playing Commander and I ran into those winter orbs, I would see a winter orb, you know, from time to time. I would get pretty annoyed because I wanted to do the stuff. And again, I just made a video about this, covering this. Commander players want to do the stuff. Whatever their deck is doing, they want to do that. That's why Stax is one of the most hated strategies. And land destruction, those two sort of play into each other where they don't let you do what you want to be doing. And that's why. But again, this gets back into the slippery slope argument. Where is Rest in Peace? What do you call that, right? Rest in Peace, I don't think most anybody would consider that Stax, but it sure is for a graveyard deck. If you're a graveyard deck, it's not letting you play the game. It's not letting you do anything. If you're playing a Marin deck, someone has a Rest in Peace in play, you're just going to be sitting there doing nothing, right? You're not going to be doing a lot. You're not going to be getting any experience counters, and you're sure as heck not going to be filling your graveyard with creatures, which is what you want to be doing, right? There's a whole lot of decks out there that a Rest in Peace will completely shut down. Yes, it is unfun when people play like a choke that's tapping down all the islands. That's super unfun for the, you know, guy who's playing islands. Certainly the guy who hates the counterspells is going to be okay with the choke, right? Again, we're getting into that sort of discussion where it's completely subjective. It's up to each individual person. And I have another comment here playing into the same thing by Caden. They should print more Blood Moon and back to basics effects. That's a hot take. And I've played with Caden quite a bit on my channel, and he's that kind of guy. He's the kind of guy who is, you know, I would say I'm kind of the same. For me, I would prefer removal because, you know, there's just something about someone has stuff in play that they can't use that really irks them. Whereas if I just remove it, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. You don't really think about it. It bothers people less, although it does bother people, again, which I will get to more of that. Printing more Blood Moon and back to basic effects. How do I feel about that? I'm okay with it. You know, as I've said many, many times before, I think Blood Moon is one of the worst played cards in the Commander format, which by that I mean people play it incorrectly. It's one of those cards, like a lot of mono red decks, you'll just shoehorn it in there just because it gives you an advantage. But a lot of times it can give other players an advantage as well. Like if I'm playing a game and a guy's got a Gruul deck, chances are Blood Moon's not going to hurt him at all. You know, most two-color decks, first of all, are going to have a lot of basic lands, so Blood Moon's not going to really hurt them. And also, you know, the green deck obviously can search for lands, so they're even less hurt by it. So the Gruul deck, as soon as you play your Blood Moon, they're laughing because they're like, okay, this doesn't hurt me at all. The guy over here who's playing the 5-color deck is completely screwed. Again, you might as well have played a Winter Orb. As far as he's concerned, he can do literal nothing, right? Again, back to basics, very similar, where it's only hating on the non-basic lands. So for someone like me, and again, Caden, same way, he likes his monocolored decks, less colors. You know, more cards like that would be good because then he could give himself a big advantage. But you're also, in a way, giving an advantage to other opponents who are doing that. So you do have to be careful, right? In fact, I've played several games on my Discord where, because my patrons obviously are a little sort of like-minded with me, I've played several games on my Patreon where everyone was playing a monocolored deck. So Blood Moon and Back to Basics weren't going to be very good cards there, right? I'm okay with it for sure. If they did that, I wouldn't be upset about it. For some reason, Back to Basics is seen as more of a Stax card than is Blood Moon. Blood Moon is like an auto-include in every mono-red deck for a lot of Commander players. Back to Basics is not an auto-include in mono-blue decks, though, for some reason. it does tap your lands down. So you are going to have non-basic lands that don't untap. So it does hurt you a little bit more. Whereas Blood Moon doesn't really hurt you at all in mono red deck. Not much. Again, those cards I think are horribly misplayed in the format a lot, where people will just, as soon as they can get it out, right? Again, you watch Legacy and these other formats where these cards are played, and you got to get them out right away. In Commander, that's not the case. If I play a Blood Moon on turn 3, I will probably let the guy who's playing the Gruul deck completely take off into outer space, and he's going to be getting more of an advantage than anyone. So you really have to be careful when you play cards like that. Moving on, though, WebWeb UK says, my hot take is Commander tax should be reduced to 1 mana. Or keep it as it is, but allow 1 colored mana instead of 2 generic mana. Very interesting. I've actually never heard this before, and I've never even actually thought about it. Reduce commander tax to 1 mana. Sure. I guess I'm okay with that. As someone who is, the majority of my decks are built around my commander, I sort of advocate for actually building your deck around your commander. Yeah, it is possible. I do have my Dragonlord Jamoka deck where my commander isn't necessary at all. It is helpful, but certainly not necessary. And if I could definitely play that deck without ever casting my commander. I'm okay with doing that once in a while. I'd like to keep it to a minimum, though. You really should be building around your commander. That's the whole point of the format, right? So the fact that we make commander tax less so people can use their commander more or get it out more, sure, I'm okay with that. It's particularly important against, I talk about monolith commanders and how monolith commanders, you need them in play in order for your deck to work. So if you just zap that guy's commander a few times, he's pretty much out of the game. I have talked about on my channel before playing against an Obeka deck, and Obeka is one of those commanders. It's not entirely a monolith commander, but it's pretty important for your deck to be doing anything. And if I played against that guy, I killed his commander once, and then he waited a couple turns, played it again, and then I killed it again, and that was it. He did literal nothing for the entire game because at that point, his commander cost 8 mana, and by the time he got it out for the third time, the game was already over. So he would have very much, liked the idea of his commander tax only being 1. Loot Sweeper added to this, and he said, I've seen a variant I really liked that has you put tax counters on your commander as they return to the command zone, and you can pay 2 generic mana at sorcery speed to remove 1. Very interesting. So, you would do what you normally do where you put your commander in the command zone and you put the little counter on it so you know how many times you've cast it. And you can actually tick down, right? So say you have a dice on there and you have two counters on there. You can tick it down to 1 by paying 2 mana at sorcery speed. That I kind of like. That I like a lot. So now if your commander gets up to a lot of mana, and again, Command Beacon is a card that obviously could go in any commander deck, and I have advocated in the past for cards like Campfire is another one that I love a lot, where I just really like having these cards in the commander format that can get your commander out of the command zone. Not necessarily for cheating commander tax, but a lot of those commanders that you want in your hand rather than on the command zone, like Phage, that you actually really need them in your hand. This will put a little bit of pressure off of Command Beacon. Like Command Beacon's been reprinted 1,000 times. It's still like a $5 card. And again, I would imagine 90% of the decks out there probably are built around their people's commanders, and they want to be having their commander in play. And if people kill it a couple times, it makes it so that you really can't play your deck. Either of those rules, I'm pretty okay with it. I'm okay with either of them. Next hot take from your sponsor, removal is cringe, which he has in quotes because he didn't actually say this. Someone in his playgroup said it. Removal is cringe. That person obviously is someone who just wants to do their thing. Again, this goes back into my video about you want to do the stuff. Again, the slippery slope where I don't really like the Stax pieces, the Winter Orb and the Rest in Peace and all that, because I want to be able to play my deck. That argument keeps on going to the point where I don't want to see any removal at all. I don't want to see any board wipes. I don't want to see nothing because I want to go off. I want to do the thing, and I don't want anyone stopping me. And again, I think we're going a little too far here, right? We're going a little too far with that argument where now I don't want to see any removal at all. I don't want to see any because I want to be able to play my commander on turn whenever my commander comes out the first time and never have to recast it again so that I can just play my deck and have no one interfere. I think this is silly. I mean, I get that, commander, again, the mentality is a little different than a lot of other formats, but just being like, hey, I just just leave me alone and let me do my thing is ridiculous. I think just play, you're just playing solitaire at that point. You might as well set up 3 chairs with mannequins in them and just give them little counters for 40 life each, and then you can just hammer away until you kill them. Like, what's the point? Interaction is really, really important. And removal is part of interaction. Counterspells is part of it. There's a lot of different things going on with interaction in games, but you really need the interaction. It really makes for a fun, interesting game, I think. In a similar theme, Saphir said, removal does not win you games. And of course, he's taken a little bit of a jab at me because I have said many, many times on my channel, removal wins games. He says protecting your game plan wins games. Also, the more removal there is on the table, the more dissatisfied players become from not being able to actually play the game the way they like. So again, that exactly what I just said. They want to do the stuff, but where do you draw the line? I'm just going to let you do whatever you want, right? Protecting your game plan, certainly. And I've talked about this, and I'll just say Saphir is one of these guys that he loves his janky combos. And of course, when you put all the effort into assembling that janky combo and someone just swords your combo piece or Croson grips your combo piece, it's a little bit of a bummer. So that's why he's got this take. And he likes his protection. And again, that for me is an auto include. I talk about it in my 6 things every commander deck needs. You do need protection. Protecting your stuff is just as important as removal for me, because it's essentially the inverse of it, right? Where I do need to protect my commander. I do need to protect my stuff. It is going to help you win for sure. And as I've talked about before, removal wins games. Obviously, removal doesn't actually win you the game. It stops your opponents from winning the game so that you can. And that's why he doesn't like it, and I really do, because he's going to be trying to combo off, and I'm going to be trying to stop him so that I can do what I want to do. Again, it plays into the same mentality. I want to do this stuff. But you know what? I'm playing my A Name as 1 deck, and that commander costs 12 mana, and if you're going to combo off on turn 5, I'm never going to play my deck. I'm never going to play my deck if I don't have removal. I'm just going to be sitting here trying to get my commander out every game, and by the time I get to 12 mana, it's game over already. The shuffle up and play another game, I really, that comment always annoys the crap out of me. CEDH players say it a lot, but for CEDH players, they're expecting, they've built their decks around the game might end on turn 2 or 3, right? And again, getting to the whole CDH argument, with CEDH, watch those games, guys. It gives you some perspective if you haven't. I think a lot of people have at this point. Those games do not end on turn 2 or 3. Very rarely. You would need that God hand, right? You need that perfect opening hand and nobody else has any interaction, right? But they always do. You always have the Force of Wills. You always have the Flusterstorms. You always have the Fierce Guardianships and all that stuff that is going to stop your opponents from doing what they want, right? Angel's Grace is a card that is played in the CEDH format since forever because it just stops your opponents from winning the game immediately or on turn whatever. That's why those cards are played. That fits into the removal sphere as far as I'm concerned. So stopping your opponents from winning games is going to allow you to do the things that you want to do. And that's why it's really important, especially even in casual Commander. Again, my mentality with Commander deck building since pretty much the beginning was, okay, I don't get to do what I want to do because my opponent is doing stuff. And again, this plays into the Stax piece as well. If my opponent plays a Winter Orb, I'm okay with that. I'll just Nature's Claim it right before my end step and all my lands untap. I'm good. I'm golden. That became my mentality. My mentality became, if my opponent wants to play a Winter Orb, if my opponent wants to Kiki Jiki or whatever, I have an answer in my hand, right? So I'm okay with that. I can handle anything my opponents are throwing at me. That's why I say all the time, I want my removal to be versatile. So I can, whatever situation arises, I'm going to be able to handle it, right? So that's my take on that hot take. And lastly, Loot Sweeper says, I think that players hating parts of the game is a good thing. If you have that strong of a negative emotion over a mechanic of a card, then you must really care about it overall, and there are other things that you love. I agree. I completely agree with that hot take. I don't even think it's a hot take. I hear people say on my channel all the time, why, old man yelling at clouds, or why are you getting so upset about this? Because I've been playing this game for over 20 years, and I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on it, and I also think it's the greatest game ever made, and I love it. I really, really enjoy doing it. So if I'm not getting, like, what's wrong with me if I'm not getting upset about it? Is there anything you care about in your life that you like? Is there a video game? I don't know, something that you really like, whatever your hockey or baseball or football team is, and they make a trade that you don't like, you get really upset. Oh, old man yelling at, like, what are you getting so upset about? You care about that thing. That's why. I very weird when people comment on my channel, and they do it on other channels too, obviously. Oh, why are you getting so upset? Because I care. Because I'm literally made this channel because it's something that I care about and I love talking about and I love doing. One of the worst, and this will fold in, I saved this for last for a reason, because this is going to fold into my least favorite comment of all time. And it's funny because even guys that have been playing Magic as long as I have will sometimes say this. And it's baffling to me. It's just a kid's game. What's the big deal? It's just a kid's game. I have people say this, sometimes I would play online with guys, and again, they would do things that I'm like, that's not, whatever they're doing, Armageddon, a casual game, and I would get upset, and I'd be like, man, what are you doing? Like, that's not casual. And they'd be like, what's the big deal? It's just a kid's game. I don't understand that argument. I never have. It's silly. I think people maybe get it from the fact that packs of Magic cards, I think, say 13 plus on them. So it's like, oh, well, 13-year-olds are playing this game. How many 13-year-olds do you know play Magic the Gathering? Everyone I know plays Magic the Gathering is 20 plus. Just look at the content creators. Every content creator. I mean, there might be some out there that are like little kids or teenagers, but every single content creator I know is in their 20s or 30s or even older. Okay, so what are you talking about kids game? 13 plus means 13 is the minimum. That's the minimum for playing this game. It's not everyone playing this game is a 13-year-old. You have to be at least 13, right? Just think about it this way. If a movie says 13 plus, does that mean it's for kids? No, 13 plus means it's probably for adults, and they're saying if your kid's not at least 13, you probably shouldn't be letting them go to this movie, right? It's not a kid's game. I mean, come on. Decks cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. I don't know a lot of, I got kids. They don't have the kind of money for that, right? Adults typically have the kind of money for that. It's not a kid's game at all. Drives me crazy when people say that. Why are you getting so upset over a kid's game? Yeah, a kid's game that cost $1,000 for one deck. I mean, come on, that's not a kid's game at all. That's my hot take. Okay, there's my hot take to end this video is please stop using that phrase, it's just a kid's game. That's ridiculous. I mean, not only is it an incredibly expensive game that invests a lot of time and money, but it's also a game that, again, as I've stated many times, is possibly the most complicated game on the planet. In my opinion, it's more complicated than chess. How many people would call chess a kid's game? So very weird that people say that. Please stop doing it. I know people will, but whatever. You guys let me know in the comments below, what are your hot takes, or what your hot takes on my hot takes are. I guess these are my patrons' hot takes that I then gave my opinion on. And of course, as I usually do on my channel, I gave a lot of hot takes as well. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below, though. That is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.